Hello everybody, welcome back to another media reviews by me, Tanner. And the book on the list today is The Things They Carried by Tim O'Brien. This book is actually my favorite book of all time. It's probably the book that moved me the most out of any book I've ever read, and it sounds like an exaggeration, and it probably is, but this book really changed my way of thinking about certain things and just the way I see the general world as a whole. So this book was written in 1990, and it's considered fictional but self-autobiographical as well. Tim O'Brien is a named character in the book, but it is not 100% accurate to Tim O'Brien's story of being a Vietnam veteran. So Tim O'Brien did serve in the 23rd Infantry Division of the United States Army, and this book was written about the 23rd Infantry Division of the United States Army during the same exact time that Tim O'Brien was in Vietnam, but it's not based on what actually happened to Tim O'Brien in the Vietnam War, or the Second Indochina War, if you want to be technical. So it is purely fictional, but there are hints of reality and truth in it. And this book is also a collection of short stories with not really an overarching plot, but there is an overarching theme to Tim O'Brien's story in this book. Not the author Tim O'Brien, but the character of Tim O'Brien. So if that's sort of confusing to you, what I'll say is read the damn book. Among my other reviews, this is another book that goes by extremely fast. Actual reading page count goes to about 230-ish pages. The last page is 233, but that's not counting the foreword, the table of contents page, etc. So it's around 230-ish, maybe 220-ish. But the writing in it is very, very big. The spacing is quite nice. And there are a couple of chapters in which each page is very poem-esque. And I say esque because they're not real poems, but they're either space-like poems or written in the same style as a poem, but they're not poems. They're short stories. But I have some personal history with this book, as I'm sure every book and movie and TV show has personal history. But I was in U.S. history class, and one of my favorite teachers of all time came up to me and was like, you know, I've known you for a little bit, and the way you discuss in class and the way you have so much interest in history and the knowledge that we talk about, I do this very rarely, but I'm going to suggest a book to you. And I was like, all right, cool. I've always been a reader. I've always been super interested in history, especially military history or U.S. history. And he was like, The Things They Carried by Tim O'Brien. And I was like, okay, wrote it down. I went home that night and researched it. And I was like, oh, this sounds really cool. All right. And then when I got it, I think I read it in like 2 days. And I went back the next week and I was like, wow, this book was amazing. Thank you so much for your recommendation. I freaking loved it. Before then, my favorite book was The Outsiders, which is still in my top 3. And that book, that's another video, but but The Things They Carried is freaking amazing. Like, you know, it's not considered a memoir, it's not considered an autobiography, but I would still put it in that genre just because of the realism. And like, yes, this is a fictional book. By all accounts, by Tim O'Brien himself, this is a fictional book. It's fake. It's fake. But because of the reality of it and the realness and, you know, the depression that comes with it and the mental states that come with it and the psychological aspect that comes with it, I would kind of put it in that category. It's a fake memoir. How's that? It's a fictional memoir. So it's still in the genre, but it's just a fictional version of the genre. With that said, wow. If you like military books, you know, things like Black Hawk Down, or one of my favorite Vietnam era books is called Guns Up. This relates totally. There are war aspects, you know. There's chapters where grenades are being thrown and they're in an ambush and they need to hunker down behind a hill and, you know, they need to throw out some rounds out there. There are chapters like that, but there's also chapters that are solemn and sad and, like, you know, they talk about suicide and the mental aspect of coming back from a war and, amputation and stuff like that. But then there's another chapter about love and how carrying a picture with you can mean everything and is the difference between life and death, literally. So, one chapter you'll be excited and it's a total page turner, and the next chapter is like, you're going to cry on the page if you don't turn it fast enough. You know what I mean? So this book has everything. And while it's not as commercially exciting as something like Platoon or Black Hawk Down, it is mentally stimulating. And I think that's something that books require to be good. And this does it. This does it extremely well. And you should read it. I do have a lot of personal bias because, like I said, I have personal history with it, and it is my favorite book of all time. But I would give this book, honestly, like a 9.8 out of 10. I don't think there can ever be a perfect piece of entertainment medium. So if I'm consistent with this rating of 10 stars or whatever, there will never be a 10 on this channel. But this is pretty much as close as it can get. And I think that anybody should read this, especially anybody who's interested in Vietnam, anybody who's interested in the psychological aspect of the military or its consequences, so to speak, and really anybody who wants a very small snapshot of the American mindset of this time. Tim O'Brien is actually an accomplished author. He's written multiple famous books. If I Die in a Combat Zone is the one off the top of my head that I know of. But he also has 2 or 3 other books that are, I believe, national or New York Times bestsellers. As you see here, this is actually the 20th anniversary edition. I think this one was a little bit more expensive, and it's hardcover, so any hardcover is going to be a little bit more expensive than a paperback. But I prefer hardcovers. You can travel with them better, they last longer, and they're easier to hold and handle, and you don't feel like if you accidentally grab only the cover that you're gonna hurt the spine, and you don't have to break the spine. As I have a video of paperback breaking the spine. You don't have to do that with hardcovers because they just kind of work. So it's less work for more money. So that always works for me. But either way, the things they carried is multiple parts depressing, multiple parts exciting, and multiple parts relieved that people like him came home, and relieved that the war didn't go on longer, and relieved that, well, you'll be relieved at the end of the book when you realize that it was all fictional. So there's that too, which is not a spoiler. We don't do spoilers here, but that's not a spoiler. It's literally a fictional book. But reading it, you're going to be like, oh my God, I can't believe it happened to this guy, But it's fictional. It's fake. Okay, it's fake. It's fake. It's fake. With that said, stories like this did happen. Stories like this were common. Not books. I'm saying like literally stories of the Vietnam War and the veterans that went through it. It did happen. This is a real fiction. Take that how you want it. Stuff like this did happen. It's scary, it's frightening, but it's also exciting. And off the top of my head, there's nothing like very historical fights in here. There's no Khe Sanh, there's no Da Nang or Ia Drang or well, I think they actually go to the Da Nang Air Base, but there's no Tet Offensive in here, nothing like that. It's just very solemn, but also exciting. And I think anybody should read this book. I love it. They say that this book is an American classic, and I can definitely see why. Read the book. I promise you'll like it. And thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it just like I enjoyed this book very much. And I'll see you later. Thanks for watching.